Welcome, everyone. I'm Xerxes Spencer, Manager of Fellowship Programs here at the National Endowment for Democracy. On behalf of NED's International Forum for Democratic Studies, I'm delighted to welcome today's presentation, Election Observation in the Digital Era, Challenges and Opportunities for West Africa, featuring Reagan Fussell Democracy Fellow Tidiane Togola, who also goes by Tito. We are delighted to have with us as discussant today Sophia Mostrup, Deputy Director for Central and West Africa at the National Democratic Institute. And I am especially pleased to recognize in the audience today Mali's Ambassador to the United States, His Excellency Mr. Tiana Coulibaly. Your Excellency, thank you for being with us. As many of you may know, the Reagan Fussell Democracy Fellows Program is an international exchange program funded by the US Congress to host some of the world's most dedicated democracy activists, scholars, and journalists to conduct independent research and new projects here at the NED. Now in our year, the program has hosted more than 240 fellows from over 90 countries since its founding in 2001. Within this remarkable group, our speaker today stands out for his expertise in the digital domain and his impressive innovations in electoral observation in West Africa and beyond. Over the past 10 years, information and communication technologies, or ICTs as they are better known, have contributed greatly to the success of election monitoring missions across Africa. Digital technologies have enhanced the quality of data collected, made it possible to identify election day incidents, and enabled issues to be addressed in real time. Despite this success, the introduction of ICTs has been fraught with challenges. Poor infrastructure, lack of training, and resistance to change from governments and civil societies alike have all prevented ICTs from realizing their true potential. In his presentation, Tidiane will examine the promise and the pitfalls of using ICTs in election observation in West Africa. He will draw on his experiences as a digital expert to explore new frontiers in election monitoring and consider how ICTs might overcome technical difficulties and political constraints to help pave the path toward a peaceful and democratic Africa. An ICT specialist at the Réseau d'appui au processus électoral au Mali, the support network for electoral process in Mali, and technical director of the National Agency for Telehealth and Medical Informatics. He has worked with NDI to set up systems enabling political parties and civil society to monitor elections in Guinea-Conakry, and with Open Society Initiative for West Africa in developing software for their election situation room toolkit. During his fellowship here at NED, he is exploring the potential of ICTs to facilitate electoral observation in Francophone West Africa, with a focus on developing a customizable open source web platform for use in non-partisan electoral monitoring. Dr. Sophia Mostrup is Deputy Director for Central and West Africa at NDI. She has worked with NDI in designing and implementing democracy support programs in the region, including most recently the presidential poll in Nigeria. Prior to joining NDI, she worked for the United Nations in Cameroon and as country representative for the Danish International Agency in Niger. She has authored chapters for the World Bank Social Accountability Sourcebook and has 3 books on semi-presidentialism. We will now turn the floor over to Tidiane, who will speak for approximately 25 minutes, followed by Sophia, who will speak for about 10. For those of you on Twitter, you can follow this presentation and contribute by using the hashtag NEDEvents or by following the forum at Think Democracy, the endowment at NE Democracy, or Tidiane himself at Tidiane Togola. If you've not already done so, please take a moment to silence your cell phones And finally, let me take this opportunity to thank everyone involved in preparing for today's event, most especially Research Associate Elise Alexander. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Xerxes. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, for coming. Before I start, I would like to thank His Excellency Chenan Kulubali, Mali, for taking time out of his busy schedule to be here today. I would like to really thanks in a special way the National Endowment of for giving me the chance to conduct my research here through this fellowship. Particularly, I would like to thank Sally, Dr. Sally Blair, and my research associate, all the fellows who really makes my stay here very enjoyable. Thanks to to the NDI who gave me the chance to be more involved in election and democracy process. Finally, I would like to thank my families and my friends who really support me since I was a student, and Salif Sanogo is one of those. Thank you to all of you for coming and to listen to me. So today I'm going to share with you this topic, election observation in digital era, opportunity and challenges for West Africa. Through this presentation, we're going together to explore some background on ICTs and election observation. We're going to see some very nice experience that we've seen in West Africa. Then we're going to explore also challenges, and I'm going to introduce you a new concept that Democoding 3.0, and finally I will wrap up with some recommendations. So election observation is what the different organizations used to do when they want to ensure the election integrity. I mean the integrity of the electoral process, and they do this in order to be able to promote the equity and transparency of the electoral process, when they want to prevent the violences during the election process, and also when they want to address the different incidents that can happen during the election day or maybe after the election day. And election observation for me lend value to democracy and grant legitimacy to election outcome. And information technologies are the set of tools that are used for information or modify or simply to exchange information. And by this, I'm talking about the digital information, so the digital. And information technologies are really very interesting because they can be adapted to all kinds of fields. And this is one of the reasons we are using them today, because we can adapt them very easily. And for me, as we are in a new society, information ICTs are the fuel of this new society. And this society is the knowledge sharing and information society. In the past, when we want to do election observation, what we used to do is we use the paper, as you can see here, I mean the hard copy, to collect information. And when we take those information, we all the paper and then we bring it to the election observation headquarters, so that the election observation committee can issue a press statement. So, and this press statement, after is issued to the population through radio, as you can see, this approach is more a one-way approach. It's really an information approach. There is no. So today, this change, we are in another approach, which is more back and forth approach. As you can see here, we collect information with SMS. so that to be able to get all those information in real time, to process the information in real time. And as you can see here, the election observation committee is able to issue its press statement in real time, and the population is able to interact directly with what is happening during the election day. This is really a communication approach. It's a back and forth approach. And this approach is really by the digital information. And because the user today have a new culture, it's actually a digital culture. They use SMS, they use mobile phone, they use social network in order to be able to interact with real-time things. They want to create information. They are not interested in just coming to talk about information. So the other point that really makes this approach very interesting is that today we have the information shelf-life is really very limited. For example, when an incident happened in the in an polling station, we can say, okay, there is an incident in the polling station. 5 minutes after, an observer will send an SMS to say, okay, this incident is now fixed. There is no more incident. So as you can see, the information shelf life is really very limited today. And all those elements are the same, are the characteristic for the digital era. Everything goes very fast. So why are we using today ICTs for election observation? We are using them for the first reason is that they help us to save time. They help also election observer to improve their response time when something happening, for example, when there is an incident. They help also to enhance data quality. They are a very good tool when we want to detect very quickly election rigging and fraud. And in West Africa, we have today a good coverage in terms of internet coverage in the capital city and suburban area. And for the rural area and some overcomplicated area, we have a very good penetration rate of mobile phone. So the population can use those elements. Tools are also for data in order to observe election with all those ICTs things. So we can use ICTs at all steps and all stage of election. We can use them during the pre-electoral period, particularly for information and civic education. We can use them the election day for election monitoring or violence monitoring. We can use them during the post-electoral period. And using ICTs at those points, using ICT during all those stages and taking account different kind of technology, this is what personally I call being holistic, taking a holistic approach. And this holistic approach is very fortunately something that countries in West Africa are doing today. For example, in Mali, during the election observation, during the election in 2013, presidential election as well as the legislative election, civil society has set up a website that we call Anga Election. And this first website has been used to give information to population, and also the population can interact with the group, with the a Facebook page also has been set up in order to be able to monitor a little bit what the political parties are saying, and also to monitor what people are what is the thinking of the different person. The civil society set up also what we call a response to citizen platforms. It's basically something which is really based on SMS. When someone wants to know how to vote, he just can send an SMS, he will have some answer to that. Or if the question is really very specific, he will have some more details through the direct response through this team. And the government side, this is something very interesting. This last point is something that the government has set up. So it was an SMS-based system to know where the polling station is. If you want to know where is your polling station, you just send an SMS to know where is your polling station instead of to go to see or to walk out to see on a paper. So this can take some time. So all those elements have been used particularly for information education. So during the election day, most of the country today in West Africa are their own platform. For example, here we can see in Nigeria, they have set up this platform in order to collect and process and as well as display data in real time. In Mali, the same thing has been done, and we've seen also the same thing in Liberia. So there is just some few difference. For example, here in the specific case of Liberia, they have used Ushahidi, which is a technology which helped them to observe or to do those kind of things. But it has been used particularly for violence monitoring. Ushahidi is a great tool for that. And this is a specific case of, because Ushahidi is also a crowdsourcing tool. So, but in Mali and in Nigeria, it was more for systematic election observation. All of those platforms that you can see here have as common denominator the mobile phone. They all collect data through mobile phone, so by SMS, and then they process in real time all those data and they display the result in real time. So during the post-electoral period, the most technology we've seen today are radio, TV, and social network, because they are really easy to implement. And why are we using all those? Because we want to maintain an electoral environment through sensitizing the population and conducting advocacy. So doing all those things looks here like something easy to do, but they present challenges. And the first of those challenges is actually the organizational and management challenges. When the civil society, even sometimes when some government want to use those kind of technology, the first problem is the understanding of technology. Most of the time, people want to use technology, but they don't understand what those technologies are, how they can use them in a very accurate and better way. The second thing is training. Many people want to use them, or many people start to use them without having the required skill. And the other point is the cost of ownership. In Mali, for example, when we were using for election observation, we've spent something close to $1 million for the software. This is really not sustainable. In the other countries, it was the same case. People spend a lot of money because we think in terms of technology. So we should think in terms of the cost of ownership. Means when I want to use technology, what will be the cost of the tools I'm going to use? What will be the exact cost of the different elements? So this point is really something very important to see. And the last point is the need for human resources. The human resources should, today, when you want to perform election observation, you cannot go to decide, for example, to take your brother or your sister as election observer if they don't have the required skill. So you have to think to that also. The second point is the technical issue. The first one is the weak coverage. If your technology, if the main technology of your system is on web, it's a web-based platform, you have to be, for example, aware that in Africa we have a very weak internet coverage. For example, you will be able to broadcast your information in the capital city, but be able to broadcast your information based on web in the rural area. We're using are sometimes difficult to set up. For example, in Guinea-Conakry, when they decide to use Ushahidi for systematic, instead of to be a saving of time, they really waste time, because the first thing was they wasn't able to set it up correctly. They was after obliged to change technology to go to access. And because access is not really designed for this kind of activities, by collecting information with SMS, sending in it, helping people to access in real time, so they was obliged to change again to something different. So they really waste time. There is the point of sustainability and adaptability. So something which is really very common is that after the election day, the tools that we buy, we're going to buy server, we're going to buy simple computer, we're going to buy a lot of, all of those technological things that we're going to buy after the election day, people used to take them for themselves and not at all for the organization. So this is not sustainable, because in the next election, we have to buy some new one. This is not for no one. And this is the point we have to fix. Before even start to buy the equipment, we have to tell what will be the fate of those equipment. And we have also the need for an sustainable economic model. This is really very unfortunate. It's not the point of view of NED, it's my point of view. Today the civil society business model is like a philanthropic. This is not sustainable. It's not sustainable because civil society needs to set up some activities in order to generate a little bit incomes for their own activities. This is really something important. Otherwise, they will only set up activities only when they have money. And they will set up activities very on a specific point for them during the election day, but they will not be really effective. So the concept I want to introduce you today is Democoding 3.0. So probably we can ask ourselves, what does mean 2.0? Why not 1.0, not 2.0? Because Democoding is a concept based on three pillars. The first one is the human capacity. And through my fellowship, I'm working on designing, on setting up a network that we call Democracy Tech Squad. I will come to it just after. And the second pillar is the best practices. And through my fellowship, I'm a handbook. And the third element is, the third one is the rights tool. And through my fellowship, I've developed a software called Yehude. And this software can be used with different tools, like the social network or different other tools. So for the human capacity, Democracy Tech Squad. So the human capacity is the meaning, by human capacity, I mean network of persons who are using ICTs for election observation or in general to strengthen democracy. So the Democracy Tech Squad is a network. It's a West African network of specialists who use ICTs to support democracy. This network with international network, and now we are setting up this network. It's on progress, and the headquarters of Democracy Tech Squad will be in Bamako. And the second point is Yehude. So Yehude means in Fulani systematic observation, and it's a software. This is how it looks like a little bit. So it helps you to data map your information. It helps you also to have some analysis on different elements of the election observation, depending on what you want to do. You can manage it in a very simple way. So what Yehude does actually. So it has the other platform, the previous platform. Yehude is able to collect data analyze them, and then display them. It's a web-based platform, and the data are collected by SMS. Adapt to all type and stage of election. You can use it for all type and stage of election. It's really user-friendly. Yode is free and open source. And also, Yode give a business opportunity to the young developer. Yode is free and open source, but when someone in Africa we have some young developers, they can develop their own plugin and Yode. So they can sell this plugin. This gives, and Yode come with this handbook. And this is really very useful for Yode because the handbook that I'm setting up come with the information of 15 countries' electoral system. So this is an advantage. The second point is this handbook show how you can set up or you can plan your election monitoring operation so that you don't have to make any mistake from what people used to do. And the handbook show how you can use Yode for your activities in combination with other tools. The handbook also gives the key indicator. This is something really important when we want to set up an election. So we need some key indicator, and the risk analysis as well has some proposal to fix those risks when they happen during the election day or during the process. So these are some advantage for Yode and for the tool. So just before finishing, I would like to make some recommendation. So my first recommendation goes to the community. I really recommend the international community can invest in strengthening of democracy. This is something really important, particularly in the human capacity development, because we need to get some more useful and some new skills for in terms of use of ICTs for human rights and democracy. And this human capacity development should not be only for civil society, but it should be for civil society, government, and private sector. I also recommend this international community to invest in the development of technological tools and also in innovative projects and entrepreneurship and youth startup. To the West African countries, I want them to develop the ICTs infrastructure. This is really something important. It's required today. We don't need to go on the international internet. We can set up an internal internet to help population to access to those information, to the inside informations. So this is really very important. Internet coverage, electricity network. I also recommend them to be more open to ICTs and to the use of innovation. I know some countries are really against that. And I recommend that the civil society and to the civil society as well as to the government to make some more accent on the civic education and ICTs training. Because when people are trained in ICT, they can use them for all kind of activities in order to help democracy to be more powerful. So just finishing, ladies and gentlemen, I tell you that as you can see here, those children that we see here are the ones who will take decision tomorrow. And ICTs, we can use computer, we can do everything we want to do. If they are not well educated, they will take some bad decision tomorrow. So, these are our generation. These are the person who are the MP. All decisions we are going to take right now are going to affect them. So one of the best decisions we can take, for me, is to cultivate democracy in our children, in those children. And if we cultivate democracy in them, they will be better Democrats for tomorrow, and they will succeed where we failed today. And we are in digital era. The era of those children is not the era of our parents. It's our era, actually. It's their era. The era is ICTs, is tools, technology. So it means they are not the same citizen. They are digital citizens. In this era, let's make them a model of digital citizen. And I'm sure they are going to make us a model of Democrat. Thank you for your attention. And
Thank you, Tidiane, for that spirited, engaging, and informative presentation with very tangible, practical implications for West Africa and beyond. Let us know to Sophia, who will share her comments with us. Sophia.
Thank you, Zassus, and really, félicitations, Tidjani, for a very nice and engaging presentation. And I think you really did an excellent job at describing how information and communication technologies, ICTs, have been used to increase transparency and build confidence in electoral processes in West Africa, notably by helping to overcome challenges related to the timely and accurate collection, treatment, and transmission of. And these new technologies, which have so clearly helped to facilitate participation, communication, and organization for democracy activists in the election domain, can also be used as part of the broader menu of tools available in democratic processes and institutions beyond elections. And that's what I wanted to start by touching upon briefly, some of these other that exist for using ICTs to strengthen democratic and governance processes beyond elections, because I think that will also help address a very important issue that you raise, which is the sustainability question. What happens to these very significant investments in tools, technology, skills, networks that are built for elections? What happens to them after the election process? I'll talk about on some of the challenges that go perhaps beyond what you raised, and then conclude to leave plenty of time for questions. So in terms of opportunities, ICTs to strengthen governance more broadly, we have seen examples where the same methods and technologies that have been used for domestic election monitoring have been used to monitor service delivery or to keep elected leaders accountable for delivering on election. And this is sort of a transition from, you could say, a transition from election monitoring to political process, which in a sense is a good way of keeping these monitoring skills sharp and ready for the next elections, while also helping to maintain citizen engagement beyond the polls. And as I mentioned, that transition can help address somewhat the sustainability issue that you raised. I wanted to give two quick examples, one from Albania and one from Nigeria. In 2014 in Albania, the Coalition for Free and Fair Elections and Sustainable Democracy, CFFESD, monitored the performance of primary healthcare centers across the country. The same sample-based methodology and using cell phones to call in information like they had done for election monitoring the year prior. So during a one-day period, they deployed 500 observers across the country who reported their findings based on a questionnaire to a call center. And based on these findings, which were then treated by the call center, the group was able to issue 2 public statements and also to hold a press conference, just like you would do on an election day. And among the findings were that only 17% had the proper infrastructure required by Albanian law, and that more than 90% of the centers were not accessible for people with disabilities. The government actually reacted quite positive to this exercise. We saw the Albanian health minister tweet back. They acknowledged the usefulness of these findings and that they would use them to guide their ministry work. And this monitoring exercise also helped to sort of re-energize the domestic observers who were especially enthusiastic because they cared a lot about the service monitored through this activity. In Nigeria, the Center for Democracy and Development, CDD Nigeria, intends to engage in what you could call monitoring of the delivery on pre-election promises by newly elected President Buhari. Thus, CDD has launched a web application, what they call the Buhari Meter, which is inspired by a similar tool, the Makimetre, that was developed for Senegal by a group of civil society organizations. In Nigeria, CDD will use a combination of crowdsourcing of comments from citizens on government performance. They will do a policy and media monitoring exercise, and also they'll conduct some spot checks initiated by the government. And all this information collected through various mechanisms they will use to then assess whether the government's promises have indeed been achieved or not. And they intend to the information through a progress rating bar, like a thermometer in a sense, that will show red or green depending on whether promises seem to be met. On their website, they also have a clock counting. So they're already counting how many days Buhari has been in power, how many hours, how many minutes, so he can continue to feel the pressure. So despite these significant potential contributions that these new technologies can make, not only to elections, and really, Tijani, you did a fantastic job describing that, but also beyond that to governance progresses, to governance processes more broadly. There are challenges, you touched upon some. And in a recent foreign policy article, Tom Carruthers actually put the question very bluntly to 6 experts on political change when he asked why technology hasn't delivered more democracy over the past 15 years. Among some of the reasons are what you touched upon, Tijani. There remain, of course, issues with accessibility. The internet coverage is often problematic in many ways. Also, these new technologies can be exclusionary. So, for example, it's estimated that 5% fewer men use the web in developing countries, and this gap widens to 45% in sub-Saharan Africa. So another point that was raised in the article of Tom Carruthers was that ICTs are, of course, tools like any other. So their impact depends on who uses them and what they're being used for. Also, new information technologies remain vulnerable to government interference and control. In the DRC in January, we saw the government suspend internet and SMS access when there were ongoing demonstrations against proposed electoral reform. But perhaps most importantly, the fact is that communication and information technology, they don't drive social change. It's people who drive social change. People need to be motivated and organized to take action, to pressure for reform and change. As a conclusion, NDI study on citizen participation and technology that was funded by the National Endowment a couple of years ago. The conclusion of the study was that technology is most effective when it's used in combination with support for leadership and coalition building around a common vision, so that it's the vision the various objectives. So to conclude, I would definitely agree with you, Tijani, that there's a need for a holistic approach to fully leverage the benefits of technology, and it takes hard work, as you outline, to ensure impact and sustainability. And ICTs should be seen as one among several tools for democracy activists in the digital era. One final word on sustainability. Tijani, you brought up the role of the private sector in the development also of innovative, sustainable tools, such as the Yehuda software that you discussed. And I think that it is indeed important that we work as international partners, we work more with the private sector in the development of innovative, sustainable tools that are adapted to the local context. And help facilitate participation and accountability in government. For example, in Nigeria, NDI worked with a firm called Timber Objects, which is a small startup company that was founded in 2009 to develop a flexible database for the management of PVT data. I think what you're proposing goes far beyond that. But in this example from Nigeria, when the was first developed in 2011, it cost $100,000 and it took several months. But when the same database was adapted for use in 2015, it only cost $15,000 and took 3 hours to stand it up. So there's clearly a benefit in having a sustained relationship with some of these young firms that and help you adapt some of these new tools. I should say that this database has also been adapted for use in Zambia, Malawi, and Tunisia as a very good example of South-South collaboration. I would conclude to echo some of the points that you made, that working with local experts in the private sector is ensuring greater sustainability of technological innovations that are aimed at strengthening democracy and democratic processes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sophia. Observations. We now have time for questions and discussion. Before I turn it over to the floor, I thought I might take my role as moderator to pose the first question, which is a follow-up to Sophia. You touched upon the point of ICTs holding the promise to strengthen and facilitate democratization, but as we know, in many parts of the world, they also have the potential to deter democracy. Mm-hmm. You mentioned how some governments will seek to shut down the media, the internet. But I wonder if either you in your work or Tidiane in your region have observations of authoritarian governments actually deploying technologies, obviously not to strengthen, but to deter democracy. Do you have examples of that you experienced, and what might a specialist like yourself seek to do to overcome that particular digital challenge? Either of you.
Go ahead, Tijan.
Well, in West Africa, we actually don't have a direct experience like that. You can see some, not in the election day, but before the election day, we can experiment this kind of approach. For example, the specific case in Mali, when we decide to set up the card Nina, which is more something for, we change all card in biometric card. This kind of technology can be good, but in the same time, they can be very, very complicated. In our case, when it happened, I'll just give this example. It's really very unfortunate, but it happened. When the government decided to go to the Nina card, the population wasn't actually ready. This was the first problem. And as well as the government himself. The technology had been set up without, after registering people, no one was able, for example, to make the matching control on this system. This means we are going to use technology, but instead of to strengthen democracy, it's going to make democracy more weak. The first problem was that everybody, the population was not confident in all those data. And during the election day, some of those cards has been used twice. And the direct consequence was that the technology, instead of, for me, this is my point of view, instead of helping people to help our democracy, I mean, to make the vote process more transparent, more good, to make our democracy a bad example of democracy, because people vote twice with the same card, or we can see different person with, for example, the card with someone who is died, but we can use his card. So this is, I mean, the government will never said, okay, we are not going to use technology. They even will said, yes, we want technology, we are going to use technology, but not in the right way to use. So this is something very bad.
Yes, although it's not intentional, it can have a negative impact. Yeah. It's not. I can give a couple of examples sort of to the use of technology such as databases or social media. For example, in Zimbabwe, for the last elections, there was quite a bit of manipulation that happened with the voter roll, the database that contained the voter roll, so that there was an overrepresentation in the end of the rural population and underrepresentation of the urban population, so that when a civic monitoring group went out and did a parallel vote tabulation, the parallel vote tabulation more or less confirmed the official results, but that was because all the manipulation had happened before with the database containing all the information. That's one example. Sort of countering the positive effects of parallel vote tabulations by acting even earlier in the process. And an example of the use of social media is currently in Burundi, the government, or President Nkurunziza very effectively used Twitter as he was in Tanzania when the attempted coup happened. For a while, nobody knew where he was, but then he started, the coup has failed, I'm on my way back. He was documenting, I'm in Gozi, I'm coming. So that was an example of how social media was used very effectively to communicate from the government side, while on the other hand, independent radio had been, of independent radios had been destroyed during the coup attempt. So just a couple of examples. Yeah.
Okay, why don't we open it up to the floor? If you could identify yourself and your affiliation. Who would like to ask the first question? Yeah.
I'm Barry White.
Barry from the Holocaust Center. Hi.
I'm interested in the post-election use. You said you wanted to use the system for advocacy after the election to ensure peaceful acceptance of the results. Do you continue to use SMS to monitor what's happening on the ground, and do you develop messaging in advance, kind of thinking ahead of what particular things might happen and developing messages to address those particular situations?
So do you use SMS to continue monitoring the post-electoral period and
then have targeted messaging if problems develop in a particular area?
yeah.
Are you trying to anticipate what messaging available and then try to target messages? Know where trouble's happening.
So you can tell us more about the sensitization and the advocacy that you participate in the post-electoral period. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, thank you. Yes, we continue to make some push SMS, but not only SMS. We actually use more radio and TV because they have a very good impact than SMS. For example, in the rural area. In terms of targeting SMS, well, it's really very complicated to target your SMS. If it depending on, it also depends on what kind of targeting SMS you want to do. If you want to target some specific topics, for example, I want to make a specific message on violence or on the outcome of election, and you want to send this to all the population. In that case, it's really very easy. Yes, this is what we're doing. You cannot, for example, say, okay, in Kidal problem, we want to send a specific message to Kidal. We want to send a specific message to the young person. We want to send a specific message to that. This is a little bit complicated because the operator will never accept to share the data with the civil society. This is a big issue today. We actually test to have a partnership with the different telecommunication operator in order to do this kind of activities. It's not possible, but how we can do it is possible. We actually have set up another SMS-based system. People are able to subscribe themselves. When subscribing, they will tell, I'm a 25-year-old, I'm a man or I'm a woman, or depending the gender they are. Based on this, we set up a new database, but this database is not country representative. It maybe like or maybe less than 1% of the population, and we can make some very targeted message to those persons. This is what we actually are doing in terms of targeting message.
Thank you. Ruth has a question.
Thanks, Tidiane, for this very interesting proposal.
Ruth Diamant Reagan Fassel Fellow from
excuse me, I am
Argentina.
Ruth Diamant Reagan Fassel Fellow. I want to ask you to probably inform a little more about the idea of civic education. If I do not understand badly, the use of this technology is for people who is related to technologies. You have one idea how to incorporate, to include people who probably is not so close to the technologies, and what ideas that you have to include people from the primary school that you put in the last photos to know about this kind of proposal. Thank you.
So how to draw tech-savvy people to this domain, and how to draw school children to this domain?
Yes, this is a very interesting question. So the non-tech person today, my point of view is that today everybody somehow is using technologies. In a very rural area, you will see people with mobile phone. And something which is really very interesting, and maybe in the future, is to set up some vocal server. Allow population to call this vocal server and to interact with them. I have had this idea after discussing with some person in my country. They actually are not speaking French. They don't write. They are in the rural area. But they said, oh, I've left a message on my responder. This means they already know how to use the responder, and no one teach them this. So, but another point, as I was saying, is not we have to use the right technology for the right person. When you want to discuss with the person who are in the rural area who who doesn't have internet, you have to use radio. Radio is a new technology. It's new. You can use TV. This is some approach that you can use, but maybe not web platform. So for the children, it's really very interesting, and this is where we can easily set everything up, because at the school, the first thing is to bring them the program that they are interested in. For example, the cartoon, you can make some cartoon for civic education. You can also make some game, some video game or mobile phone game for the young person. I have had a chance to test a game here called Democoding. It's a game, but it helps people to learn about democracy, to see what are the different issues, and you can run for office, those kind of thing but based on just the game. And the children are really very interested in that. And the last example I'm going to give is that, my daughter is 19-month-old.
19 months or
Yeah,
19 years?
19 months. 19-month-old. One day, sleeping during the weekend, and she just wake me up like this, because on the TV there is this program called Dora the Exploratist. She sings that Dora is singing. She repeat those different elements, forest, castle element. She's learning, but just by a simple cartoon. So these are some very innovative way we can use to involve the children, and it is this era is the era of these children. I mean, we even don't need to teach them; they will learn themselves.
Thank you.
I'll just add that an important component of the parallel vote tabulation, the domestic observation that NDI supported in Nigeria, was the visualization of some of the findings. And that goes to the point of how to share some of what comes out of all of this with people who may not be as literate. So, for example, there were maps of Nigeria with different colors depending on questions related to the electoral, timely opening of offices. There was also some very nice maps that helped illustrate where was likely overvoting, where voter turnout was sort of suspiciously high in certain states in the South. So that's kind of the tools that you can also use to increase the accessibility of this information. And in general, those kind of tools make it easier to at a glance to understand what it is that you are trying to communicate with, that you have collected.
Thank you. I just had a quick follow-up for Tidiane. You mentioned there are parts of Mali where even French is not spoken, and so I was curious, the SMS are then in your own languages in addition to French that they may be able to read? Is that correct?
Yes, people maybe don't understand. They are able to read in Bambara. You have some person who read in Bambara, but if you want, for example, to use the voice call, I mean the voice server, you don't need to send SMS. You just have to call a number, and then you will start to interact with the server. For example, the server will tell you press 1 if you want to listen to your message, press 2 if you want to delete something like this, and this is what the person or the population in Mali. I mean, even in the rural area, we have some person who really interact with those server. So the SMS are in French, in Bambara, and in Fulani, and also in Sarakuli. So we target some specific language, but as I was telling to doctor, the only problem is that you cannot target on a region. This can be really a waste of money.
So the same message goes out several
Yeah.
times in different languages?
Yeah, in
Or
different
one?
person. Yeah, no, it's not one long message. Just different message. We can send, for example, 5 messages. The one will be in French. The second one will be in Bambara. So this is what we used to do. But those SMS are more for the person who can read. Yeah, and yeah.
If you cannot read, then
Well, if you cannot read this is an issue, and the solution for me for now is the vocal server. It can be expensive, but you can use it. And the other element is that the government can set up this kind of vocal server. The civil society may not be able to do it because it can be very expensive, but the government can do it, or the government can make pressure on the telecom in order they can set up this vocal server to say, okay, if you want, has everyone is able to listen to his message for free, so you have to add this specific point because it for the welfare of the country. We can do this kind of thing in Africa.
Okay, we have a number of hands, so maybe we will take three together, starting with Lily Mengesha from Ethiopia, and then the woman behind her, and then we'll go behind to Razarumi. Lily.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Tidiane, for the good presentation. I'm Lily. I'm American from here at NED. I wanted to know about the platform you mentioned were used during the 2013 election, I think in Mali. I wanted to know how the outcomes were. If you are personally involved in the process, I wanted to know more about it. If it's the social media, how it was able to reach the population at large, and if it was a successful outcome. Also, you mentioned about just related to using techs like understanding technologies, the training costs. So how does the software you introduced, the Yaoundé, if I am not mistaken, how this software addresses the challenge? Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Lily. Yes.
Thank you, Tidiane, for your presentation, and Sophia as well. I'm Lindsay Robinson. I'm a program officer with the National Democratic Institute. I'm going to sneak two questions in because one came up as Tidiane was answering the last one. For the vocal servers that you mentioned, I think that's a great option, but the question that I think I've run into is how do you advertise that? How do you get people to know about it if they aren't going to read a billboard, for example? How do you advertise that to illiterate folks? And then my second question was if you could just talk a little bit more about the democracy tech squad that you're setting up. You know, who are you inviting, and what do you see as the goal of it in the long term? Thanks.
Razarumi from Pakistan.
Yeah, I'm a visiting fellow at the NET, and a very good presentation. My question was that how do you collate all the information that comes from the field? I mean, how is it utilized or processed, and then how is it used to impact the authorities like the election commission or whosoever is in charge, because we've had this experience in Pakistan as well in the last 2013 election where a lot of stuff from social media was being relayed, but it was not having the desired real-time impact that it ought to be having because of it was so much and scattered and not collated and verifiable, right? So that was the question. The other, I have one or two comments based on Sophia's very useful presentation. We in Pakistan have also been using ICTs for improving governance in the Punjab province, which is the largest province, and monitoring of services and tracking corruption, as well as school enrollment. So some of these models have been very useful. But often the problem is that ICTs go just halfway or quarter way because you need institutional change for the kind of monitoring and the lags and the gaps to actually have the desired policy impact. So the question really is philosophically, I mean, does institutional change come before, or is technological innovation enough to drive that change? And one final point I think I wish to make on this whole idea of ICTs. I mean, I think definitely they have globally, they are making this impact in sort of enhancing transparency in governance. But the real challenge that comes with that whole experience is that how do you actually involve the excluded sections, particularly those who may not be able to engage with the new technologies as adeptly as others. So you have in many countries, like in South Asia, you have nearly half the population below or near the poverty line, and even half of that is like marginalized groups, the minorities, the tribals, and they are the ones who actually do not have any service at all at times. So how do you engage them? I mean,
Thank
it's a
you.
it's a
Very good series of questions. And then we'll come to you next because we have a lot to go through. So, do you want to start with Lily Mengesha and her question? She wants to know about the platform you mentioned in Mali. How did it reach the population? Was it successful? And then Yaoundé, how will Yaoundé address the challenges that you mentioned in your slides?
Thank you very much. And I have to tell that the country that really impressed me in terms of is Ethiopia, because they are the only country who's able to block the whole SMS system during 2 years, because we are used to make democracy more important. So, so I can understand your question. So the platform we use, so there, all of them have a specific goal. The first one was used for data collection, automatic election observation, and violence monitoring. This one really was more to collect data from the field and then proceed those data, analyzed, and display the result. So when the press statement, for example, is issued to the population will come the point of view on what we said. So and the social network was designed to increase this interaction between the population and also to monitor political parties. This was really very useful. The first, for example, during the election day, one of the candidates, Soumaïla Cissé, his representative in one of the polling stations have been, I don't know if he used the word fire out, but they decide, the president decided to take it out from the polling station. And what we've seen on the social network, Twitter and the Facebook page of Soumaïla, was that, okay, they want to make some regain, they put our representative out. And as observer, we control this information. We observe what's exactly in this polling station, because this is a really critical incident. They just explained the situation was the representative tried to replace the president by telling the voter how they have to vote, telling the president, no, you have to wear this one first. And the president tell him, this is not your work. Your work is more to be here, to observe and to represent your political parties, but not to take any kind of position or decision here. And then she actually wasn't happy with that. She insulted the president. When she insulted the president, it was the right of the president to take her out because the voting process stopped. This was the reason why she was out. The president decided to take her out of the polling station. And the other thing we learned from this experience is that the different political parties leaders are not. They even don't know what they put on the page, because those pages are more animated by different persons. Maybe some young person in the political party, someone was in charge of Twitter, some other was in charge of Facebook. So it's not his point of view, it's the point of view of the person who is now sending information. this is something we learned from this specific point. And my personal implication was, I was the one who set up the website, who developed the website. I was also the one who developed also who set up the Facebook page and trained people to it. And I had the chance and the honor to design the database for both for the civil society, but also even for the government side. I helped to set up the server for the SMS system. So this was my personal implication. So for Yehudi, how Yehudi can address this holistic approach? So Yehudi is designed to be adaptable to all type of election and to all stages of electoral process. So it means you are not going to use it just for election day. You can use it when you want to do for all kind of monitoring system or survey system you want to set up. Yehudi is designed for those kind of things. It will help during the pre-electoral phases to collect, and as Yehudi is linked to other technology, for example, for example, Facebook, YouTube, so people can interact through Yehudi in a single area. So as it's free and it's really very user friendly, people will not need to be to have a technical skill. If you are able to use Word or PowerPoint, you will be able to use Yehudi. So this is how it can be very useful for those kind of things.
So it's a good segue to Lindsay Robinson's question about the Democracy Tech Squad, which is part of Yehudi.
Yeah.
Maybe tell us a little bit about the Democracy Tech Squad. And then her other question was the vocal server. If people cannot read, how would you advertise the vocal server?
Okay. So Democracy Tech Squad is a network of specialists. So it's not a network of organization, it's a network of specialists. We want to set up this network of specialists because we know that people are a good skill in technology, but sometimes they need to have also a good skill in politics or a good skill in specific thing. Or we know some people really want to use ICTs for their activity, but they don't know how to do it. So network, we will be able to train people to involve them some more, and also to be more innovative in the business model by giving some specific certification training, not a single 1 or 2 day workshop, but a really strong technical training to those people who want to use ICTs. Yehudi is, and it's supposed to be in all West Africa. For example, the key problem we've learned is that when you want to use ICT for election in Côte d'Ivoire, you are obliged to take an expert in Mali. Or we can help. We will be able to help to train people through this network in Côte d'Ivoire. So you will not need at all to pay for a consultancy from overseas. You will be able to work directly with those persons. For the specific question of how we can make advertising, we have to use radio and TV. It's very simple. We have to use vocal approach to inform population in order to make those advertisements so that they can use, because they are already able to use mobile phone, but for the advertising we have to use vocal approach, and we can use all kind of approach to make advertise. Yeah.
So Raza has a question, and I want Sophia to respond to it, which is whether ICTs come first or institutional change comes first. Sophia.
Yeah.
Well, it all comes together. Yes, I mean, it goes back to the question, is it technology that drive change? Is it people who drive change? And I think that, as I mentioned, we've seen through some of the research that we've done that technologies by themselves may not necessarily change behavior, and by that may not necessarily change institutions either. For example, in Uganda, NDI used a tool, You Speak, to seek to facilitate communication between parliamentarians and civil society, but there wasn't enough of an advocacy drive or sort of committed network of activists behind that who were pursuing a specific goal. If you just pursue communication for communication's sake, it's not likely to have the same impact. If there's it's a part of a coordinated campaign. So that, I think, is sort of the lesson to take away, at least from our experience, that you really need to go beyond the tool, to have some committed people behind who are organized and mobilized and conduct advocacy campaigns using other tools as well. And that also goes to your point about how to involve more marginalized groups. That's true, some of these more traditional tools, maybe door-to-door campaigns, to make sure that the views of these more marginalized groups can then be channeled through these intermediary groups that are in civil society and then help to influence institutions and processes. That would be.
I'd like to invite Ambassador Coulibaly to make an observation, and then we have a question at the back as well, and then we will wrap up. So the mic is on its way. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I wanted to make a comment as ambassador of Mali. At the beginning.
Check to see if the mic is on, please.
I think it's on.
Okay.
Tidiane is a Mali national, and I am not an election specialist, but I understand that the tool he has elaborated can improve election systems in countries in Africa. And well, I said that I'm, as Mali's ambassador, proud of that. And
we're proud of him too.
Yeah, you are too. Yeah, I wanted to thank everybody here to give him the opportunity to present his tool, but also you, Mr. Sensler, and you, Madame Mostrop, for giving him this opportunity to thank the NED, but most of all, encourage him to continue to improve his tool, because I think improved election systems is improved democracy, and improved democracy is improved everyday being for human beings. That's what we are every day struggling for.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, one final question from the gentleman waiting patiently at the back, and then we will wrap up.
My name is Omar Sise. I'm an assistant manager, risk champion at Seaworld contract with FedEx. I have a contribution first in reference of the first question that Spencer asked about the Nina card. I mean, democracy works when everybody participate. I mean, a lot of people participate. But the problem with Nina was that a lot of people didn't have self. Even here in the region of United States, we had the problem here. A lot of people didn't have it. So my question is about the beautiful recommendation he did. I mean, the image is beautiful. Like the kids will be the future deciders. That's wonderful. But do you guys have a system to make sure that those kids will be able to really embody these tools? The tool you have, the government can use it too, as Spencer said. They can use it in their benefit. So how do you guys have a system to make sure that this kid will embody these tools?
Thank you. And Nina, identity card that you were mentioning. So it's a good question, and it relates to what Razarumi was also pointing out about the need for institutional change, a cultural change. But maybe you can respond, and then we can conclude.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, His Excellency, Mr. Ambassador. Umar, thank you for your question. I think my personal point of view is not, I'm not taking the government one side and taking the civil society the other side. It's not a, I mean, it's not a fight. Everyone should use the tools for democracy, all right? So for that specific reason, the tool is not designed with some kind of restriction to say, okay, government will not be able to do that, or government will be able to do that, or to say, okay, civil society will be able to do that. No, the tool is designed for everyone. Everybody will use it for the specific needs. The only thing we can do is, I mean, this is the advantage of this tool, is that when someone is using it, your data will be interoperable with the other system. This doesn't mean, okay, your data we are going to flush out your data to the other system. No, it will be secure. It will be really, the confidentiality of your data will be here, but it really designed. For example, when Malian government said, okay, we want to use EOD for not for election observation, but we want to use EOD for election result, to collect election result and display the results in real time. They will be able to do it based on EOD. If they do so, this will be very useful for the civil society, because civil society can say, okay, we've used the same approach, we have the same database design, we have the same tools, so we can check our data to see if those things match. This will be something good. And the other last point, really, I prefer coming back and educated those children. It's not the tool. It's not a question of tool. It's not a question of technology. It's just a question of decision maker. Someone can be very bad. A person can be very bad, but he won't. He really. I mean, what he will do everything he can do in order his son or his daughter or the people who are related to him can be good. He's not bad because he wants to be bad, but because he just have been in the system. So today, the question is not to use technology to educate, but to take decision and to apply decision. The technology will never change that. We have to do it ourselves. Even personally, we have to do it when we are at home. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zaxis. I just wanted to thank everybody for coming and for this very excellent discussion. And thank you to the NED for organizing these sort of presentations, and to Tijani for all the work that you do. We've had the pleasure in other country programs, and we definitely hope to continue doing so.
Thank you. Well, we're very grateful to NDI for its contributions to the important work that Tidiane is doing. Ambassador, we share your pride in having him with us. We count him as part of our family as much as he is part of yours. And I am so happy that you will be going back to continue your important work in extending the impact of that important work well beyond Mali. Thank you.